Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of my conversation with the money couple, Scott and Bethany Palmer. If you remember from the last episode, these guys are financial advisors extraordinaire. They know their stuff, but they really, really hit their stride when they figured out how to crack the code for the money issues that are leading to divorce and strife in people's relationships. Today, we're actually going to talk about how to have this conversation with kids, because they wrote not only the 5 Money Personalities book, but they also wrote a book called 5 Money Conversations You Should Have with Kids at Any Age. I'm close with the title, right, guys?
You've got it.
Age and stage.
Age and stage, which I really like, because the conversations you have with 5-year-olds, with 15-year-olds, all stay with them. And then I have a 20 and 23-year-old, and I still have to have these conversations, and they have to have it with me. Thank you for coming back to the show.
You bet.
It's great to be with you.
So, in the last episode, we talked about why this is so important in marriage. Why did you write this book?
Well, one of the things that we discovered when we were doing a lot of our research, and we did a lot of our research on how couples agree about money or don't agree about money. We asked a lot of questions, and we found that there were 5 different ways that people look at money. And then actually we discovered that there's a primary way and a secondary way, and that helped us develop the money personalities. So we have 5 money personalities, and everybody has 2, a primary one and a secondary one. But while we were doing that research on adults and marriages, we also did research on kids. And what we did is we had discovered, actually through our own kids, that kind of a child's form of currency is actually their candy, believe it or not. So because like some kids save their candy, some kids eat their candy really fast, some kids organize their candy, some kids trade their candy with their brothers and sisters, and some kids just give all their candy away. And we were really interested in this. And so what we did is we had parents observe their kids and how they dealt with their money right after they got it on Halloween. And so they would have this huge bag of candy, and we researched it, and we discovered that kids were handling their candy in the same way that adults were handling money decisions when they were adults.
I love the way in the last episode you pegged my son who ate M&Ms one color at a time, and you pegged him as a saver, right? And
saver security
seeker. So the fact that he organized all his M&Ms into different colors and had kind of a consumption plan, that's his security seeker part of him. He needs a plan. But there's another part of him that also saves his candy. So he probably doesn't let a whole lot of it go very fast. As a matter of fact, we have a nephew, and we were going trick-or-treating with him, and he said, I don't even know why I'm going trick-or-treating. I have candy from last year. And so, but then there was people like myself where, man, my candy was gone in like 3 days. I ate it so fast. And then I also traded my candy with my brother. Like I traded a Reese's for a sour ball or whatever. And that said something about me. So anyway, all of that research that we had done for the marriage part of our company, we were like, my goodness, what about these kids? And what we discovered is that all kids actually just ingrained in them. No one was telling them what to do with their candy. They were just doing it. And we really discovered that these money personalities were really kind of ingrained. They were ingrained in these kids, even into these young ages.
And you gave me an aha right there, because again, my ex-wife and I are 2 different people. We talk about money differently, but neither one of us were like my older son or and so you're right. They actually did evolve in a much more natural way.
Well, and I think what you just described is where parents really struggle, because parents will say, oh, I'm more like this son than this son. And what we have found is that speaks more to the money personalities than anything. So one son might, be a little bit more of a spender, a little bit more life of the party. And you would go, oh man, I'm a lot more like him. So naturally I understand him a little bit more. And one of the things that we are trying to help parents see, and the reason that we wrote this book, the 5 conversations to have with your kids at every age and stages. First of all, there are different stages of life and obviously ages, but also how do we figure out what their money personalities are so that we can speak into them differently. So like, for instance, my youngest, he has the same money personalities I do. He's a primary spender and a secondary security seeker. So me telling him as a financial advisor, you need to start saving money for your car does not work, will not work. It's never going to work. But what I did when he was 8 years old was we set up a future spending account for him. And so when he hit 15, he purchased his first car, a Mazda 3, because he never saw it as a savings account. He saw that as his money to spend later.
On his car.
On his car. So that's how we actually just changed the vernacular with him a little bit to get him to do what we wanted him to do, which was pay for half of his first car, which he did. And so as parents, what we find is that if we can, first of all, get over ourselves and over our money personalities and the woulda, shoulda, couldas that we think our kids should do money-wise, get over that, learn what their money personalities are, and then speak to those money personalities, we're going to keep super great open conversations about money in the future. And we're going to know them in a way that they don't even completely know themselves until they're adults.
Can I just, to interject, the loving and understanding way that you're giving language and skill to this conversation is, and I've interviewed a lot of people and I've raised 2 kids. This is really unique and very, very clear, concise, and I love it. I'm in awe.
Well, thank you. And, it's from all the research of the different people and an understanding that in marriages, you've got 2 different people and you've got to be respectful of those too. So if you need to be respectful of each other, then you also need to be respectful of your children and the differences that they have. I'll give you
we're not respectful with our children.
No, we're not. Let me give you another example of how this works. So my other son, our oldest, he is what's called a primary risk taker, but he's a secondary security seeker. So that is a very complicated combination. The way we know that is A, we can see it in how he acts, but B, he took our assessment. We have an assessment for 5 to 11-year-olds, 5 to 12-year-olds, another one from 13 to 17, and another one from 18 to 25. Because at different ages, you look and deal with money and currency in a different way. So at any rate, my oldest son came home one day and he said, I'm going to run for class president. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, of course you are. You're a primary risk taker. Of course you're going to do that, And he said, but Mom, there's 8 other people running and, I should be able to win. I'm like, great. Then he came back 3 days later and said, you know what, Mom, I decided I'm not going to run for president. These 8 people, I might not win. And, I don't know. I just don't think I'm going to. And in my mind, I said, that's his security seeker talking. So on one day, his risk taker was. 3 days later, his security seeker was popping in. And I said, I said, okay. And then I thought about it for a day and I was like, okay, what's going on here with him? Because he was so adamant about wanting to run and now he doesn't. And I figured out it was his risk taker, security seeker. So I came back to him the next day and I said, you know what, I've been thinking about this. Have you ever thought about the fact that maybe it was your risk taker that was talking on Monday that really wanted to do it? And it was your security seeker that was talking on Wednesday that talked you out of it. He's like, you know what, Mom, you're right. I said, you know what? I know that you would be a great class president. I'm not saying you have to run for class president, but I want you to think about it over the next day and think about if you want your risk taker to take over that decision or you want your security seeker to take over that decision. It's your choice. Do you know he came back the next day and said, you know what, Mom, I'm going for it. I'm going to do it. And I said, great. And you know what happened 3 weeks later? He was class president.
Wow.
So it's an incredibly powerful way to be able to really understand your children, because I'm not a risk taker, security seeker. I don't know anything about being a security seeker. That's just not me. But I have studied it. I understand it. And now we can speak into our children in such a powerful way. One other really quick story. My mom was totally opposite of me. So she was a saver security seeker, and I am a spender risk taker. Could not be more opposite than her. And our relationship was horribly strained. And now I know why. And I can tell you an interesting story about that and how I didn't feel valued as a child. But it's super duper important to understand the differences of what we have with our children.
And I think we want to take money off the table when it comes to our kids, because they're not generating income and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And we should teach them, the 4 key principles of savings and responsibility and giving and doing all these things. But which is all important. I'm not saying that's not important. We're financial advisors. We get it. Yeah. We get the importance. But I think of your son that saved the $1,700, which was every Christmas gift and birthday money that was just getting stuck into that drawer. A fun conversation to him would be not saying, hey, go out and spend your money, but say, what's something that you really want to experience in your life? And put that on experience and say, the only way you're going to experience that is if you spend the money to do it. Let's start with the small experience that you want to do and use your own money to do it and feel the sense of accomplishment when that's over, whether it's whitewater rafting.
Actually, I have an answer to that, because the World Series is in Washington, D.C. And we promised ourselves that we would go to the World Series. Well, he said, I am going to get standing room. A friend of ours said they can get tickets for like $400 in the seats. And he says, oh, no. He says, I'm going to the standing room only because they're $200 and I can go for 2 nights. But he's going to he's going to spend them. What he doesn't know is that standing room only is $700.
Yes.
So I don't think any of us are going to the World Series, even though it's in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
But I get it. He had that's the one thing. And he's also, his girlfriend. So I love talking about this. He doesn't spend money. He graduated college. He's living with his mom to save money because his girlfriend lives in Texas. So the only thing he spends money on is airline tickets to Texas. Right. And then he's saving money so that he can move there. So all of this makes perfect sense to incrementally. What do you really care about? All right, you save that money. Now it's okay to spend it on the thing you care about.
That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's so fun to really see and not be afraid or threatened by the fact that your children could be different than you, and giving couples and people tools to A, understand it, and then B, to have the conversations that are so important. So whether you're talking about allowances or you're talking about getting a job or whatever you're talking about, age appropriate in that stage, now you have a way to talk to them that's going to really speak to them and speak their language.
And remembering there's no right money personality and there's no wrong money personality. So if your kids are different than you, that's great. It makes your life and your family more fun anyway. So
Absolutely.
Go ahead and embrace it.
Can we quote you on that? Because I'll tell you, there's people in my family who say this, the save, because again, we applaud saving and thrifty and all that stuff.
Oh, we do.
This whole risk taking thing is not applauded. So let me ask
it's so funny because that son that is the primary risk taker. He came home one day and said, okay, so mind you, we live in Colorado, I think the driest state in the whole country. There's no lakes and rivers here. He comes home and says he's going to buy a kayak. We're like, a kayak?
So instead of
why are you going to buy a kayak?
It's like, where are you going to take that? A puddle somewhere? But instead of like our brain naturally jumping to, that's the craziest thing we've ever heard. We just, because we know he's a risk taker, we go, well, that's kind of cool. Where do you think you're going to take it out when you buy it? And then he starts working through, oh yeah, there's really no.
That's so unfair to have parents who know how to pull those strings.
I know.
That's just not right. So let me ask you a question. So I have my other son, again, the one who hid the candy, and more like me. So he has a car, and I said, look, dude, it's an older car. It's going to cost you $1,000 a year to run this car, right? He's like, oh, really? So I said, so you really need to pay attention to, now that you bought the car, that you need to say, like, I'm trying to get him to, I can't save money, so I'm trying to get him to save money for his repairs, right?
Right.
Well, what he did was he now hands me an envelope, every couple of weeks and says, take this money. It's for when my car needs work. Take this money.
Nice.
But I like,
Nice.
how would you actually have had that conversation? I love that he came to that himself and is giving me the envelope, and now hopefully dad won't spend that money, but
Yeah.
he knows not what he does. But how would you have that conversation with someone who actually does spend money, but needs to save for the car repair, which isn't a fun thing to save for.
Right.
It's a necessity.
Yeah. I mean, that goes to two things. First of all, the future spending account, and saying basically, hey, I want to make sure that you don't get into a situation where you can't spend money. So suddenly you have this $1,000, repair job, and you're not able to go out with your friends. You're not able to do any of the stuff that you love. So then he's not looking at it something that's limiting his ability to spend. He's looking at this future spending account to take care of his car as more of a flexibility
Freedom.
to spend and a freedom to spend. And so that's, at the same time, it's so awesome that he kind of didn't trust himself enough. And that comes with maturity. I mean, I have people all the time that say, well, I'm a spender risk taker. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to retire because I spend all my money. And I would say to them, okay, you know who you are, which is important, but what can you learn from these other money personalities to make your life better? Bethany and I are both primary spenders. And we're in the financial advising world, but I don't at the end of every month go, oh, this is amazing. Look how much money I get to set aside. I go, oh yeah, I better practice what I preach and set this money aside. It's almost irritating to me how much we save. But the reality is we know that if we want to have the retirement that we want, we have to make that sacrifice right now. But we don't do it, we don't do it necessarily out of guilt or, because we're passionate about saving. We're doing it because we want to be able to live a lifestyle in the future. And that's exactly what your son did. Was he freed up, he gave up a little bit of his lifestyle now to make sure that when he does have that emergency, when those tires blow, when that rod gets thrown, whatever, he can say, oh, okay, cool. I can still go out Friday night with my boys. I just have to, because I gave my dad the money to make sure I took care of it.
So what might be really fun now is discover what his money personalities are. Have him go take the assessment. The kids' assessments are free. Go and take that, and then circle around to him. So let's say that he is a spender risk taker. Let's just say that's what he is. You can say, you know what? The fact that you give me that envelope every month and knowing that you're a spender risk taker, you're one of the most responsible, awesome kids I've ever known, that kind of thing, because you're affirming him based on who he is. And just because this, like Scott said, just because, like Scott and I are like, I'm a spender risk taker, that means I've got to be more responsible in the sense of making sure that I've got everything checked off for our financial planning. But that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that that's one area that I need to work on a little bit, but I'm a very responsible person. So
and my gut would say your son is a spender security seeker.
Yeah, he's probably a spender security
because he's like me. He likes to spend money. He has fun spending money. He doesn't have a problem consuming. However, he kind of in the back of his mind, if he has a box
plan
checked off and he has a plan, it allows him to feel better about spending money. So I love spending money, but I won't spend money without a plan. I'm not going to buy a new suit. I'm not going to buy a new car unless I know what all those numbers are. So it's probably what your son is thinking is, oh, my dad gave me some parameters on what this car is going to cost. I'm going to come up with a plan, give that money to my dad to get it away from me, which is a security seeker, and free up spending. I almost guarantee you that's what he is.
And it's interesting. A third of society, according to our research, is primary spender, secondary security seeker. That is the most common. Yes, it's very, very common one. A third are either saver security seekers, security seeker savers. A third is spender risk taker or risk taker spender. And then all the other 20 combinations, because we have 5 money personalities, but there's 20 combinations of those, make up the rest, which is fascinating if you think about it.
Yes, it's totally fascinating.
Yeah, and just to know what your child is, it's a game changer.
And talking about your son that's flying to Texas all the time to see his girlfriend, he should have his girlfriend take because he is probably setting unrealistic expectations for her. Because if she's like a spender, she's like, oh, he doesn't have a problem spending money. He comes and sees me every 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because they actually have she flies here every other time, and
yeah, But they should take their money personality assessments, especially if they decide to get married.
Everybody should. If you listen to this podcast, please I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm trying to figure out mine because I spend money like I grew up poor. I was homeless at one point. I don't deny myself anything ever. Right.
Right.
But I took care of my ex-wife and kids. I paid the bills. She didn't work. I took care of my elderly parents, right? I take care of everybody in my life to my own detriment, right? So I gave my ex-wife too much money. I took too much. But
right. Well, that's what spenders do. They don't just spend money on themselves. They're huge, very, very generous. Give money to other people.
Huge gift givers.
Huge gift givers.
Like if you have a board and you want that board to give you money for your organization, do not select a saver security seeker.
Right.
Because they're not going to give you money. You want to put a spender on that board because they're going to get a passion for that organization and they're going to give you money.
Yeah. No, it'll be very interesting to know what your secondary one is.
I'm curious. That's what I was thinking about when you were talking about this. We were talking about the kids. So thank you. I'm glad that the assessments are free for the kids. All of this is going to be in the show notes. I need people to go to your website and take these assessments because I think the value that people will glean out of them are so immediate in their conversations, in their relationship with their kids, and their relationships with each other, and to stop beating themselves up because, I up until, recently, I beat myself up for how I handled money, right? Because again, as you said, society doesn't honor that, except when you're an entrepreneur. If you succeed,
a successful entrepreneur,
right? They're crazy and they're impulsive and when they're doing it, Jeff Bezos was a complete idiot. He was going to lose money. He was going to lose his shirt. And now he's the most brilliant guy on earth. Right. So totally get that. You guys are doing such good work. I am blessed that you were on my program and I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. It was a great to be with you.
So thank you so much. And again, for everybody else, all this stuff is going to be in the show notes. You don't have to remember anything. Get out of your car, go to work, and do your thing. So Bethany, Scott, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And to my wonderful listeners, your time and attention is precious to me. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.